Magic and Dungeons and Dragons pretty much go hand in hand. They're almost synonymous with each other. And with that comes magical items. Players love magical items. DMs love magical items because they're so much fun. But because we love them so much, we tend to go a little bit overboard. Today, we're going to talk about how not to break your game with magical items. Here we go! Because magical items are rare and expensive, they should only be offered in magical shops, probably in some very large cities. And only a few shops in a city would even sell such things. You can offer magical items for sale based on the level of your players. In the same way that you wouldn't let your 2-year-old play with your expensive computer, you shouldn't give new players legendary items. It will break your game. Now there's a really helpful chart to kind of show you the exact breakdown of magical items compared to your players' levels. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. The Dungeon Master's Guide gives us a kind of a guideline if players wanted to have such magical items crafted for them. If players wanted a common magical item crafted for them, it would cost them 100 gold pieces. That's not bad. If they want an uncommon item crafted, it costs 500 gold pieces. For a rare magical item, it's going to run you 5,000 gold pieces. For a very rare, it's going to be 50,000 gold pieces. And for a legendary magical item to be crafted for your players, it is 500,000 gold. Now, if you consider that the Dungeon Master's Guide also says that you should budget between 30,000 to 66,000 gold for an entire campaign, if your players scrimped and saved and took all the gold you gave them throughout the entire course of the campaign, they still wouldn't have enough to buy even a single legendary item. That is how expensive and rare and difficult to find these items are. That leaves only one option, and this is a great option to help make sure that you're not breaking your game with magical items, and that is to lock those items behind a boss of some sort. This can be a dragon. They have to find it in a dragon's hoard, and they only have a percentage roll to actually get an awesome legendary magical item. Or it can be in a dungeon of some kind, a mad mage's lair, things of that nature, where it's going to take multiple sessions to try and get through this dungeon to find that legendary magical item. You do not want these items for sale at low prices. You have to remember, again, magical items are hard to find and they're very expensive. Now I want to talk about homebrewed magical items. No one loves to homebrew magical items as much as I do. Every one of my players in my campaign has a homebrewed magical item. They're just fun and you can tweak them exactly for each one of your players to fit them. It's great. And you can have villains give them to them unknowingly and have curses bestowed on those, and you didn't hear that. That's fine. Yeah, I love to give my players homebrewed magical items. But there are a few things that you need to be careful of when you're creating your own magical items. That is that you limit the number that you give your players. It can be so much fun to create all of these items that you just keep giving them out like Oprah at Christmas. But you have to be careful and limit those things. Why don't you tell me what your favorite homebrewed magical item is in the comments down below? I would love to see them. They might give some other DMs some awesome ideas for their own magical items. The next thing you need to make sure you're doing if you're homebrewing your own item is that you give it limitations and consequences. If you look at the magical items that are in the Dungeon Master's Guide, they either have charges, or they require attunement, or they have some kind of curse or limitation put on them. This is to balance out the power that players get from wielding it, to make sure that they're not overusing it, and that they have to still use it strategically. So I like to do this by either attaching a curse to that item, where it requires something of the user every time they use it, such as a blood tax is always a good one, where it actually brings down their HP or steals HP from them in order to use it. Or you can have it where it causes exhaustion. And if you don't know how to use the exhaustion feat, make sure to check out my video on that. I love exhaustion, it's super fun. But any of these kind of curses or downsides is a great way to make sure that players aren't overusing those items. Another one that's a great option is charges. So your weapon or your staff or rod has a certain number of charges per day. This means that your players can only use it a certain amount of times. And if they use all of the charges, then you roll a percentile dice to see if the item breaks. At the next day, you roll to see how many charges it regains for that day. This is a great way to make sure that your players aren't constantly using a wand of fireball at every single encounter that they're coming into. Give it a certain number of charges so that it doesn't ruin everything and break your game. Finally, you can have the item require attunement. Attunement is kind of an interesting little feature. A player can only have 3 attuned magical items at a time. So they kind of have to pick and choose which ones that they're going to use. They can't just cover themselves in rings and necklaces and all of this stuff to get as much magical benefit as possible. They have to pick 3. So attunement is also a really good way to make sure that your players aren't overusing magical items. Finally, you don't have to give super powerful magical items. If you want to give your player magical items and give them lots of them, then why not try using slightly magical items or ridiculous magical items? It doesn't have to be powerful to be fun. You can have a sword that is maybe a +1 greatsword, so a common magical item, and every time they swing it, it smells like farts. I guarantee you have a player who would love that sword, and I guarantee it would open up so many role-playing possibilities. Like, just thinking about it, it's just funny. Sword of farts. Or you can have slightly magical items. I talked about this in a video before. In my campaign, we have hagstones based on real life thing. Gives a very, very slight magical bump to people who are holding them. Wish stones, things of that nature. If you would be interested in seeing an entire video on slightly magical items, please leave a comment down below so that I know if there's enough interest to actually do that or not. I have a whole collection of slightly magical items that I use in my campaign. Magical items are so much fun. Players love them, DMs love them, and you know, sometimes there's nothing better than seeing the absolute joy on a player's face when you hand them a slip of paper that explains their new magical item to them. It's like providing the best Christmas in the world to your kids. But you do need to be careful or you could end up breaking your game. Now, if you want one more tip, I'll tell you this. Halflings are good luck, and liking a Halfling YouTube video or subscribing to a Halfling YouTube channel is double luck for your campaign. So make sure you do both of those things and hit the little notification bell down below so that you find out anytime I release new content. Until next time, my friends, may your game have advantage. Halfling Hannah here, signing out.